And so Melva and I are going to tag team this whole section of safety and security. And we're going to be sharing with you some best practices. And so this one's going to be very interactive because we're going to share a poll question because we're gonna look at several areas of safety and security. And so we're going to give you a question and give you some responses, and you can check as many responses that you feel apply. And so that's going to help us with our brief discussion of these topics. And so here we go. The first one: why is a security plan needed? And so I'm going to put up that poll question right now. And as I said, choose as many of these responses as you feel would apply. How would you answer that question based on these topics? And I think this one is mine, right, Melva?
Yep.
Yep. Okay. That's what I thought. So tell us what you think. Be a couple of more seconds here. You're on the right track, some of you. All right. I'm going to end our poll, and I'll share the results here. And so, why is a security plan needed? Well, it's not required by your police or fire department. It probably should be, but it's not. It does help to get all your leaders and volunteers on the same page for sure. So that would be one good proponent of definitely having a safety and security plan. It certainly does ensure that there is a guide to know what needs to be done in any event that you do have. So that is definitely good. And it includes a map of all your emergency access routes. And that can and can't be true at the same time. My safety and security plan at my church certainly includes all of that. So, so good job there. So so I want to give you a best practice about a safety and security plan. And I would say this: every church needs to have a security plan in place that is communicated to everyone. That's communicated to everyone. So let me just lay the foundation here, because you know, your building is different from my building. Every building, a church building in New England is different, and across the country is different. And some of you have buildings and some of you don't have buildings. So every venue that we have is different. And so you have to think about your unique area and your unique building or rental facility that you have, and you need to be thinking about the security of your children and of your seniors and of everybody else that comes in your church. And so everybody needs to have a security plan. One of the things I think that I heard from this past week's shooting there was that the person might have gotten in a side door. And our church, we do the best we can every Sunday to lock the 4 doors that we have in our facility. But I have to tell you, I have gone outside and have come in the door that's been not locked. And so, you know, we have all 4 doors locked except for one. And so it only takes that one time for something to happen. So it's important that we have a plan in place, that we have some things in place, And the other thing, as I said in the poll question, it communicates it to everybody. And then everybody who is part of your security at church knows what their responsibility is. Because if they don't have a responsibility, guess what? They think the other person is doing it. And if you don't have a plan in place, you're not communicating what needs to be done. So it's so important that you make sure that you have some type of security plan in place before it happens. And I would say, now I'm going to give you a little bit of, about my church. My church on a Sunday morning has about 60 in attendance. And so we're a pretty, some say we're a pretty big church for New England, but I would say, we're on the small side. And we have a security team at our church that's comprised of 5 people. And so we have one person that sits in the back of our church, and we do have an 8-page security plan that all of our elders and all of the leaders in our church are aware of, and the security team knows what their responsibilities is. So it's so important that, you think about having a security team, and it doesn't have to be a big one. It certainly can be 1 or 2 people, it can be 1 person until somebody can recruit another person and, put things in place. Start small. There's no reason why you have to have a big elaborate plan. It's so important that you have people that are monitoring your classrooms at all times. If you don't have, Melva's going to talk about an important rule that a lot of churches should be implementing, and you should be having people that are roaming your building all the time, making sure that it's safe and secure. And I would say that another thing with your security plan, there should be limited access to your preschool and your children's classrooms. You should be knowing who can go in and out of your children's area to make it safe and secure. So that's why you have a security plan in place, so that everybody knows what they should and should not do. And your security plans should also be communicated to your congregation. So there's probably some security items that you want your whole congregation to know. For example, every church should have a meeting place outside of the church if there is an emergency, like a fire, or if there was a violent incident that happened, or there's some other emergency in the building where you would have to evacuate. There should be a place that everybody knows where to go outside your church, and those signs you should have some signs outside your church to say, this is our meeting place. And that should be communicated to people, because think about it, if you have new people come in and they're not aware of where that place is, the first thing that they're going to want to do, if there is a fire in the building, they're going to want to go to the classroom to get their children, right? And so we need to train them that you don't have to worry about your kids, because we have trained people in our classrooms that are going to make sure that your children get taken out of the building, and they're going to meet you at this secure location. So just think of things like that, and I can go on and on, but we don't have time for that. And if you'd like a copy of the security plan that we use at our building, throw that in the chat, and I'll be happy to send you a copy of that if you don't already have something in place, and you can take it and you can you certainly can customize it to fit your plan, because ours, it's a very simple one, but it's something that helps everybody in our church to have that communication. So that would be one for sure. The best practice is every church needs to have some type of security plan in place that's communicated to everyone. All right. I'm going to disappear here, Melva, and I'll put on your question.
Okay. So the poll is coming up. What are the components of the 2-adult rule? So when the poll comes up, pick the ones that you think are the components for the 2-adult rule. How we doing with that, Sandy?
Yep, I'm watching it. We got a couple
Okay.
of more seconds. Yep, we'll leave it up there. All right, oh, okay, very good. All right, I'm going to give you another 5 seconds. All right. Very good. All right, I ended the poll.
Okay, look at that. That's great. So 93%, 2 adults always in rooms with children. Very good, and that is a good aspect of that rule. 2 adults must take a child to the bathroom. That is certainly good, but there are ways to work that so you're covered there. 2 adults who are not related, definitely important. And 2 adults who know how to do CPR is very, it would be a good thing to do. But why do we have a 2 adult rule? Well, a 2 adult rule is designed so that it protects both the children that are in the classroom or in the venue, and it protects the volunteers that are working with those children. So that is a very important that you have 2 adults in the classrooms. And then the 2 adult rule requires that no fewer than 2 non-related adults be present at all times during any church-sponsored program, event, or ministry involving children and or youth. That is an absolute must. I understand, oh, well, we're going to have, this husband and wife team, they're going to, no. You need to at least have 2 non-related adults in there. Well, I'm going to have my daughter work with me. No, 2 non-related adults. Because if an incident happens, it's not that you're trying to cover for the other person. You are individual and you can speak the truth of what happened during that incident. So they need to be non-related. When you do a volunteer in your church to help assist in a sponsored program or an event or ministry, you need to have a volunteer application that has disclosure questions on it so that you know who is this person that we're trying to vet to run this program or to assist in this program. So that's very, very important that you ask the personal questions and get those answers back properly. Going along with that volunteer application is you need to do a national background check. It's or the CORI if you're serving in Massachusetts. This is ongoing and repeated at least every 2 or 3 years. We do not have any particular law that I know of in Vermont, so we go to our local police department and they do background checks. We pay them to do background checks for everyone that serves in the ministry here at our church. Next thing you need to do is to have a regular training for your volunteers. And don't think that it's a one and done. It's not. Because you have to keep reminding them, okay, these are the rules that we are doing ministry with, and we have to stick to these rules. It's like in our annual meeting, we have all the specific paperwork that we have to remind ourselves of we don't do this, but we we handle it this way. There are rules for handling our food pantry. There are rules for this. There are rules for that. And every year we go over each and every document so that we can make sure that we are following what those documents say and we're not coloring outside the lines, if you will. We're going exactly how the rules state. So you need to have a regular training for your volunteers. Maybe it's an annual thing, but at least you're having the training. And that training can be very specific and it can be very broad. And I'll come back to that in a little while. Okay, let's go on to the next poll question.
All right, so the next thing we have to be aware of is what should be included in a volunteer screening process. So let me put up the poll question here so you can see the answer, see the options you're going to have. A one-on-one conversation, determine if they're suitable, a national background check, a local background check, and a volunteer screening application. So I'm going to launch that poll and take a moment and see which ones you think should be included in a volunteer screening process. And as you're talking about that, I want to say that you know, the 2-adult rule is absolutely something that every church needs to follow. Now, if you're not doing it, just think about starting to implement it, maybe starting to talk to your leaders and your volunteers, explaining to them the importance of doing that, and begin to implement that 2-adult rule as soon as you can. Another way you can start doing that is begin to have this monitor that's walking around and can make sure, you know, that, you know, there's not any needs in the classroom. Some of you don't even have but one adult serving in a classroom, and really, as Melva said, you need to have 2 adults. So having a monitor go around at first would probably be very helpful. All right, so looks like most of you have looked at that. So I'm going to end the poll. So let me say that a one-on-one conversation is a great way to start to see if they're suitable. That's a great way to start. But the answers are those last 3. You certainly need a national background check. You certainly need a local background check if you have that. And you certainly need a volunteer screening application. And if you need help with any of those, we certainly can point you in the right direction. Again, I've developed a volunteer screening application that I'll make available to everybody. So I notice many of you want my security plan. So when I do the recording next week, I'll send you not only the security plan, but a copy of that volunteer screening application. And because they're both very, very, very important. So the best practice here is that your church needs to have a robust volunteer screening process, because I have to tell you, it's very important. And a lot of people will say to me, but we know everybody. Well, you don't really know everybody. Trust me. You know, you don't know what's happening in the homes of the people that you have volunteering. You don't know what happened in their background. You just don't know that. And so it's very important to put those things into place. I will say that your insurance companies probably are saying to you, you need to have background checks. Okay, because that's an important part. If something happens and, you know, and the allegation is made, you know, against somebody in your church, they're going to be asking you, do you do background checks? And in the state of Massachusetts, it's required that we screen our volunteers. And as Melva said, we have what we call a CORI check, CORI, and that check is local. And it only looks at the court system. So let's think about this. If all you did was look at the court system in your state, What about the people that have moved from another state and have moved into your state? Guess what? They haven't been background checked. And so that's a reason why you need not only do the local background check, but you certainly need to do a national background check. And then the volunteer screening application that I mentioned, it does a couple of things. First of all, it asks questions about the person. On the volunteer screening application that you'll see that I have, it actually asks for references. We ask for a relative. We ask for somebody that's not related to them, and we actually call them. You know, a lot of people will put those in a drawer and not call. Well, we call people and we ask them, you know, about their relationship with this person. We ask them if they'd be suitable to work with children. And then the other thing that we have on that volunteer application form is 2 disclosure questions, which ask them if they are, you know, if they have anything in their background that would, you know, that would make them not suitable for serving in this volunteer role. And those 2 questions, if they, you know, if they lie, you know, and you have those volunteer applications, and they've lied on the application, at least you have done your due diligence. And if you go to court, you'll be able to present those documents. So those disclosure questions are very important part of that volunteer screening form, because it lets people know that you're serious about the protection of your children and your young people. And so it's so important that as a church that you have some type of screening process in place. And our church does it every 2 years. So every 2 years we do background checks on our volunteers. Again, it's not a one and done thing. You have to be doing it on a regular basis. So I keep an Excel spreadsheet, and I call, you know, I ask people to do the volunteer screening every 2 years. And if they don't, then they can't serve until they have it done, because it's one of those things in our church that's required. So it's so important that you have a robust screening policy in place. All right, next.
Okay, what can you do to make sure your classroom is safe? Let's put the poll up and check off what you feel that would to do. There's 4 there. Pick the ones that you feel are important to do to have your classroom safe.
Like drinking from a fire hose tonight, Melva.
Yeah.
Another 30 seconds or so. Most everybody's taken an opportunity, so. Got it.
Okay, let's take a look. Wow, this is great. You guys did a wonderful job. Having a child identification system is so very important. Promoting a child wellness policy is important as well. So let's most all of you having a safety monitor walk around. I know you've heard that at least twice now, to ensure all needs are met, and using 100% strength bleach to clean the toys. So your best practice is to, we can have that up there, is to take a proactive approach to your classroom and put plans and procedures into place so that you and your students stay healthy. So when we're talking about that, there's a lot of things that you can think about. So systems and guidelines should be in place to keep children and youth safe in the classroom setting. So you should have a window in a classroom door or right next to that door, so that as you're standing at the door, you can see in a window to what's going on into that classroom. In my church, we don't have that option. So one of our classrooms we were very concerned with, and one of the carpenters in our church took it and made a Dutch door so that it would allow for air to revolve in and out from the hallway, but yet would allow us to see in. And that worked very well for us. You should have an ID system for your children, whether that's an ID bracelet, tags, shirts, something that identifies them, especially when it is to drop off and pick up children, so that you are matching a child with a parent or guardian. And on their name tags, you should be able to put on their name tags like a dot or 2 dots. So 1 dot was maybe if they have a food allergy, and 2 dots would be no photos whatsoever. So you want to make that tag or that identification visible to the worker in the classroom. You should have a ratio to teacher or teacher to child, ratios to teachers or child. So you can have 1 teacher for every 2 newborns, or 1 teacher to every 3 1 to 2. You know, when you have those little kids, you have to really keep an eye on them because they get into everything. 1 teacher to 4 of the 3 and 4-year-olds, 1 teacher to 5 of the 5-year-olds, and 1 to 6 for the 6-year-olds, because they're able to listen better, to take instruction, to follow what you're supposed to do. Especially if you are doing, and I know some of the bigger churches do this, if you are doing a computer system in order to keep that identification system going, you need to back that system up with paper so that there is a hard copy to do that with. Now, not every church does it. I've been in quite a few churches teaching and have seen the tablet or the computer kiosk where you can just hook it in. Those systems need to be backed up by paper. You need to have healthy child guidelines, healthy eating, healthy living, allergies. You can post an allergen list on the entrance to the classroom so that people that are coming in see what you're going to be using that day, that they may have an allergen too. And you need to know, as a teacher, your teachers need to know whether that is a true allergen sensitivity or it is an allergen preference, that they would rather not they be, near this. That's a preference. If they are going to have a reaction to something you're using in the classroom, that's a sensitivity, and you're going to need to know that. It's important to have wellness guidelines so that children do not come into your classroom if they're sick or they're feverish. You don't want them in there because you don't want the rest of the class to get sick. You should have an emergency backpack for each teacher to be used in an evacuation. It includes a map. It includes first aid. In fact, I believe, and you can correct me, Sandy, but I'm pretty sure that this can be a list can be gotten from Lifeway in their training, because they'll give you a list of what to put in that evacuation backpack.
That's right.
Also, it's a good idea to know how to use an EpiPen or an inhaler. There is training available. I believe one of the insurance companies has training on videos that you can at least see. And then you need, as a church, to figure out what's the best practice for you. Do you train everyone first aid trained in diabetes, first aid, CPR, EpiPen, inhaler, or do you have a nurse on staff or in your congregation that can handle that? For us, we have a nurse here, and she's available all the time when we're having an event or a ministry program going on. So we don't need that, and we don't have a very large church. We can seat perhaps 100 on Sunday morning, so it's not very big. We don't have a lot of rooms to meet in, so the area is very small, and she can be alerted within a minute to come and help. So you have to figure out and balance out the pluses and minuses, the benefits and liabilities of whether you train everyone or have them go through a training, or you have a nurse on location. Then you need to have some hygiene procedures. Procedures for diapering, bathroom procedures, cleaning toys, like cleaning the toys with a bleach solution to get rid of all the germs. Make sure that everyone is washing their hands, that safe hygiene practices are completed and done so that everyone in the classroom stays healthy. Now, when we're talking about allergies, perhaps you're having a snack in your classroom that not every child can have because some are sensitive to that. You can decide to not have that in the classroom at all and then choose another snack. If there's another option, is you can ask the parent or guardian to send an alternate snack if you're having an allergen that day. It all depends on the allergen. I know that in the area elementary school, peanuts are not allowed at all in the school. And there are some children that are in the elementary school that are highly allergic to the peanuts. So they have gone with like sunflower butter, or they've gone with another type of spread for their snack and meal. So it all depends, but this is a conversation that you need to have with the parents or guardians, that you make sure that you're going to keep not only their child safe, but the classroom safe. And it's not going to be, I have to do this today. It's going to take some time. It's going to take some research. But the benefits of that is that you're going to have some safe areas for the children to learn in, and have an entertaining time being with kids in their own age group and learning from the Word of God. You're going to have a safe time with them. And then I just want to talk a little bit about the monitor going around. That monitor should be going around frequently, but not at the same time every hour or whatever. They should stagger their times, but make it frequently that they're going past the classrooms, they're checking up on things. That way, if someone is watching from a longer, from a non-classroom area, they can't say, oh, well, that person goes every 10 minutes after the hour. So I know that if I'm going to sneak in, I'm going to go sometime other than that. I don't want to be around at that 10 minutes of the hour when they get onto their monitoring. So it should be frequent, but not exactly at the same time. Okay, so let's go into our last poll question today.
All right, so what ways can you ensure that emergencies are handled properly? And so here are going to be the responses on the poll questions. Make sure your evacuation plans are posted in every room. Have confidence that your volunteers know how to handle emergencies. Regularly train and plan for emergencies. And communicate those to parents. So let's launch that one and put that up. And as you're doing that, just to underscore something that Melva said, because somebody asked it in the chat about the identification system, that really starts with a child information sheet. Those of you that have a computer system, your parents are filling that out online. But if you don't have a computer system, you're going to have to use regular paper and pen. So make sure that you get that information, because that's going to have that critical information on there about their allergies. It's going to have information about who should be picking up, kids, things like that. So that's a really critical form that you need to make sure you have, is that child information sheet. And I'm going to talk about that in a moment, because they're going to come in handy if you have an emergency. Okay. Very good. Anybody else want to participate in the poll? All righty. End your poll right there. Okay, share your results. All right, so you did great. You want to make sure that in handling emergencies, you make sure your evacuation plans and all of the evacuation routes are posted in every single classroom. And even if your building is simple, you definitely want to make sure that you have those posted everywhere, and not just how to get out of the building, but also you probably want to have the name of your church, the address of your church, because if you're a volunteer there and there's an emergency, you might forget, oh, I forgot, am I 375? Am I 575? So it's always important to have that information posted with your evacuation routes. You certainly do need to have confidence that your volunteers know how to handle emergencies, but the important things are regularly training and planning for emergencies, and then communicating your emergency procedures regularly. So that's going to be the important thing. So the best practice is, it's critical that you're prepared for emergencies before they happen. So evacuation plans in the event of a fire, event of terrorism or an active shooter, health-related issues, and natural disasters should be communicated and posted if necessary. Melva makes a good point about the peanut allergies. I know churches, they are a nut-free zone. So, that it may be a decision that your church might make, but you just need to make sure that everybody is aware. I don't go to, but I visit a church regularly at the South Shore, and their children's wing is nut-free, not the rest of the church, but when you enter that area, it's totally nut-free. So they're very concerned with allergies. So you need to make sure that you're prepared for that to for those contingencies if you have that happen. And training and planning for emergencies should be done on a regular basis. One of the things I've challenged churches to do is do an emergency fire drill. And we're going to do one in the spring, and we're going to do it right after our worship service. And we're going to ask parents and everybody to stay, because we want to just practice. In case of an emergency, this is what we're going to do. The people downstairs are going to know what's going to happen that day. We're going to use one of those big horns there, and everybody's going to evacuate the building, and they're going to go to the emergency meeting places, and the children are going to be taken out by their volunteers, and they're going to meet their parents. The volunteers that are with the children are going to take their go bag. We call it a go bag that Melva mentioned. That's a backpack that you would take in case of emergency. One of the most important things that you're going to take in the case of emergency with your children is your attendance book. And why do we take our attendance book? Is because when you get to the meeting place, you can account for every single child and volunteer that you do have. So those books are very, very important. And so, and you should make sure that you have that for every single classroom that you have with children. And again, your volunteers need to know why it's important to take attendance every week and why it's important that they know where that attendance book and where that go bag is, so that they can take that with them when they leave. And as Melva said, you want to make sure it has some things, some first aid things. You have snacks in that bag. There's even a couple of things that you can entertain the kids there while you're, in case of emergency. And these plans, again, like I said, need to be communicated regularly to parents and to the church body. One of the things our church is implementing is every 6 months, we'll put in the bulletin a half sheet and just say, just in case of an emergency, we want you to know this. And what does that do? That gives your parents and the church a peace of mind that you know what you're going to do in case of an emergency. It says, wow, we have planned to do this. And so it's a very important thing. One of the things our church just invested in was an AED machine. And so if somebody has a heart attack, we'll be able to utilize this machine in order to maybe save someone's life. We had asked the church for the money, and they gave it to us, and then somebody donated the money so we could purchase it. So it didn't cost our church anything. But again, it's a peace of mind. It's saying to our congregation, we take this stuff very seriously. And in this day and age, it's so important that we make a statement like that, not only to the to our congregants, but also to the people that are visiting. One of the things we have on our website when it has to do with children is we let the people that are coming in that are looking on our website, that we query check and we background check every single person that works with our children and our youth. And so that's another way we can say to the public and say to visitors and guests, we take this stuff very seriously. And that is something that does become very, very important to people, as they're looking for a church home. So again, that would be a best practice. So it's really critical that you're prepared for emergencies before they happen. So now, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat, and Melva and I will do our best to answer them. I know that somebody had put up in the chat a little earlier about if you have parents that want to come into the classroom with their child. And there's not a problem with that. I think the statement was that they don't have a relationship with the Lord. Well, they're not going to be left with your children, and the people in your classroom are background checked. And sometimes when you have new visitors, new guests with little children, sometimes they feel more comfortable for, a few times that they're visiting to stay in the classroom. And then at some point, you need to help the parents be transitioned out. And that's something you'd work with the parents in order to see that happen in a safe way, but also in a healthy way. And I'm talking an emotionally healthy, not only for the child, but also for the parent, because some parents want to be with their babies. What do you think, Melva?
Oh, I agree 100% on that.
Yeah. So any other questions? I did see some comments here. I think we talked about the identification system. I think that was good. And yes, I will send that information about a list of classroom safety. Absolutely. And by the way, on our website, www.bcne.net, we do have a 4-part safety and security training that you can do. And it's a couple of years old, but it's still very relevant that you could point your volunteers to. We actually give a certificate. Anybody that does complete that That's always helpful. So you can go to bcne.net/kids, and you should see that safety and security, the video series. It's 4 different videos. They're short, but again, people have to listen to them, and then they take a 10-question quiz. And then after they finish the quiz, then we'll send them a certificate to say that they've completed that. So that might be an option for your folks as a way of helping them to know some of the safety and security protocol. I think this year we're going to make some new ones. And in the month of May, I believe we're going to have a webinar, a 2-part webinar on how to spot abuse in the church. And we have a counselor from a center in Connecticut that's going to come and do that 2-part session. So if you want to know how to spot abuse, and also what happens if you do have abuse in your church, what are the steps you need to take? And also they're going to talk about the aftercare. How can we care for people in our churches that have experienced abuse in the church? And so those are some things I think to look at. So I think we've answered all the questions. Any parting words there, Melva?
No.
Okay.
Just be diligent in your church to keep everyone as safe as possible. Do what it takes. And you know, I know some of these churches, some of your churches, and mine included, it's hard to get all these new things implemented, but you need to start somewhere. Take a step and do something. But do what you can in order to keep your children and your adults safe in your church.
Mm-hmm. And I promise I will send you, if people are asking for the extra information, and I will compile all of that next week. And when I send you the copy of this webinar, I'll also send you all of that information too. This subject I'm very passionate about this subject. You can tell, you know, I mean, I went as far as to write a safety and security policy for my church, and we actually sent it to our police station. Again, in our, you know, it's not required by the police, but our police and fire department both looked at it. We live in a small town, and they really thought that it was very good. So and they said they wished other churches would do the same thing, because it's an important topic, especially today. And the other thing I would say about that too is call your local fire and police and EMTs. They will come to your church and actually do training for you. We had them come last summer, and they did a 2-hour training. And again, we're a small church. We had 23 people from our 60 congregation church come to that training that Saturday. And the police and the fire department, they hit it out of the park. They really had some good information for people. So don't hesitate to use them, because they want to. They'll come and they'll help you in any way possible. So don't forget your local agencies as well. So thank you.